People won't show up for a few minutes. We'll see when they do. We are live now with Chris Giarrusso filling in for Scott and Tim and Paulo. Well, Paulo will be along a little later.
I didn't know I was filling in for anybody.
What was that?
I didn't know I was actually filling in.
You're not really. I just like to say that sometimes. You're just here, having a good time. Chris Giarrusso, the cartoonist behind G-Man and Marvel Minis. And what's
Mini Marvels.
Mini Marvels, pardon me. What's this new book you're working on? What's its name?
Officer Clawsome, Lobster Cop.
Officer Clawsome?
Yeah.
Hit it up. Tit Goblin is here with an April Fool's for us, and Sleepy Reader is here too. Two of our regulars. Saying hello. Officer. So is he Santa Claus?
What?
Because it's Clawsome, right? Instead of awesome?
Yes.
So
no, he's a lobster.
Santa Claus?
He's a lobster. He has
lobster.
Claws.
Yeah. He's a lobster. See, if I saw the visual, it would make more sense. Officer Clawsome.
Well, the full title is Officer Clawsome, Lobster Cop.
Ah. Okay, that makes sense. Because when I just heard Officer Clawsome, I thought Santa Claus. So. Which
you're probably always thinking about Santa Claus because you don't want you want to make sure you get your presents.
That is true. I'm always thinking about Santa Claus.
Most people, they don't really think about him until December rolls around. But he's been watching all 11 months before that.
So don't be messing up. You won't get any comics for Christmas.
Yeah.
I used to get comic book subscriptions for Christmas. That was always a good present. I had a subscription to the Hulk. I had a subscription to Spider-Man. I had a subscription to a few others, too. They were good Christmas presents because they gave me comics all year round.
What era was that?
Late 70s. Now mailed flat. It always, yeah. So, do you know what a subscription crease is?
No.
In comic book collecting, such a thing as a subscription crease.
Did they used to fold them?
In the olden days, they'd fold it in half and stick it in an envelope that was half the width of a comic. When I was buying them,
that's horrible.
It's set on and that's what you'll get old comics with what's called a subscription crease in them because they're creased down the middle. In the late 70s, I could never figure out. I didn't know that in the late 70s. But all the Marvel Comics ads in the subscription page said, now mailed flat. And I was like, what the heck does that mean? Now mailed flat? I never knew what it meant till years later when I found out what the subscription crease was. But in the late 70s, they had like special brown paper packaging for them. So it was, imagine a comic book wrapped in form-fitting brown paper, except there was no top or bottom. And, 99% of them got through. But occasionally you'd get one where it was just the brown paper. There was no comic inside. You'd be like, what happened to my comic? It fell out or someone stole it or something.
Oh, because it's not sealed on the end.
It's not sealed on the top or bottom. It's just open. Sleepy Reader had the folded over subscriptions, and they came in a brown paper wrapper that was open at each end. Okay, now there were some post offices that folded them. Like they weren't supposed to be folded, but the post office folded them. From what I'm told, on rainy days, my sub comics got wet. So, because I have heard from other people that their post offices folded the brown paper, But I think the from what I read about the subscription crease days, the envelope was actually they mailed them in an envelope that was actually half the size of the comic, and unless that brown paper was half the size of the comic, I don't know. But I don't think they were supposed to fold over the brown paper ones, but some post offices did, making the now mailed flat headline on the
erroneous.
Erroneous. Now mailed flat. I remember trying to figure out what that meant. Tit Goblin says, I got an old Marvel Tales open on my drafting board, and it's got the best old comics small going. The paper acid ink breakdown smells the best. Instant. See, I've never been a fan of the smell of old comics.
No, I always think it's like mildew.
Yeah. It was a smaller version of your brown paper wrapper. Okay, so the brown paper wrapper was actually smaller, and they folded it in half and stuck it in there. All right. That's what they did. Yeah. It's like, I don't like, did you get, Chris, did you ever see, what is it? It's one of the kayfabe guys, all of a sudden I can't remember the name of it. The Hip Hop Family Tree. Have you seen Hip Hop Family Tree?
I know of it. I think I've seen some of it. I feel like I've missed out on was it a series or was it just one comic?
It was originally a web comic. And then Fantagraphics picked it up. And I think they put it out in a couple of issues first, and then they put it out in trades. And I first read it as a web comic and really enjoyed it. Ed Piskor, there we go. Tit Goblin's got his name. Ed Piskor, and but Ed Piskor's a fan of like old time comics, and he likes the look of old time comics. So for I ended up getting the box set of them, of the two big oversized trade paperbacks in a box set. And to this day, I haven't been able to read it because it's so yellowed and distressed. I can't read the text. I'm just like, oh, what did they do here? It's like there's such a thing as going too far with trying to make it look like an old time comic. Wait. And they went too far with Hip Hop Family Tree. And I really can't read it. I've just been like, can you print a version where the text is legible? That people forget those old yellow comics. When I was buying them, they were new and white. So I don't have a lot of nostalgia for old yellowed comics. I see old yellowed comics and I'm disappointed.
I have nostalgia for newsprint because I like the way that the 4-color on newsprint worked.
It depends if it's new. Once again, I like new news. Like when it was new, it looked good. But
yeah, I mean, like in the 80s and the 90s, the brand new stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's easy to find stuff that's still in pretty good shape. It's not super yellow or anything, and I like the way it looks.
So do I. But if you got some of those flexographic, like especially the early 80s, if you got some late in the print run comics, they looked terrible. I don't know if you ever saw those, especially it was like the late 70s, early 80s. They switched over to plastic printing plates.
Yeah, I'd heard about that. Yeah, I don't know that I've ever had any of those that I would have noticed.
You'd notice right away because the printing is so terrible. Everything is
the wiggle. They would melt as it went through because of the heat.
It would wear down. Yeah. His friend Jim Rugg's new comic Hulk Grand Design is the same design, but not. Yeah, I just saw that came out this week. Hulk Grand Design. If you're gonna get those, wait till they put them in the oversized Treasury edition or something. I'm not a fan of those Grand Design books only because I'm not a fan of that type of continuity. Have you ever seen those Grand Design books, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's impressive, but I also feel like I'm reading a Wikipedia article almost. They're like a history book kind of a thing. It's like handy for reference, but I'm not like it's hard to.
And
It
it's
feels
also
it feels like a school book almost.
and it's also not the kind of history book I like. I'd rather them because it's treating it all as if it was designed that way, and it wasn't. I would rather see them do Fantastic Four was created in 1961, and then in 1975 they retconned it to put this guy in there. He's not, but they're acting like I remember I read, I think, the first issue of the X-Men one. And the early issues of the X-Men were like all about Mr. Sinister and his effect on the X-Men. Because in continuity, like Mr. Sinister had been around since, and I'd never read any Mr. Sinister stories, but he'd been around since ancient Egypt or something. And that, that's the story they start with, kind of. And to me, that's like, well, they shouldn't tell that part of the story until it comes to the 90s and continuity. It's just a different kind of continuity that I'm interested in, more of the history than the continuity.
Yeah, but they're trying to just like present
Right.
this
Yes.
is what the timeline currently
Right.
is.
They're trying to present
trying
it
to make
as
sense of it.
a grand design, which I just don't find as interesting. And you're right, it is a little bit like a textbook or a Wikipedia entry, because it's like, and then this happened, and then this happened.
Which I'm not trying to be critical of it, because it's still an impressive endeavor, and
and there are
useful.
people who like that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely has an audience. It's just not to my taste, is all. Just not to my taste. And speaking of not to my taste, the first issue I got this week is the Magic Order number 6 of 6 by Mark Miller and Stuart Immonen. The art's nice. The problem, I don't know how much Mark Miller you've read, Chris.
Not all of them, but like I think I read some Kick-Ass, and I read
right.
What did he do? He's Ultimates.
Yeah, he's Ultimates.
Right. I read his super. What is it? What was the Superman one? Not
Superman?
Supreme. I don't know. He had the one that was like, it was like a kid that gets the Superman powers.
Yeah, I don't think I ever read that one. Red Sun, was that his?
No. It was his own book, so it was like it wasn't
okay.
It wasn't actually Superman, but like they did. It was an analog on purpose.
Right.
Whereas they were like literally they were scenes directly from the first Christopher Reeve movie in it.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I've ever. Well, I'm hit or miss with Mark Miller's writing. He's usually very artist dependent for me. And Stuart, and I bought Magic Order Volume 1, which was another 6-issue mini a couple years ago. But I didn't enjoy Volume 2 as much, because my take on Mark Miller is I call him the master of the obvious. And that usually there's no twists in his plot lines. And whether I think they're good or bad all comes down to how well I think he and the artist pull it off. Like, he telegraphs his moves all the time, but that's not necessarily a bad thing if they pull it off. Except I think Magic Order Volume 1 actually had a twist to it. So this one was just like this one was a little too obvious, because this one was, there's a good Magic Order and a bad Magic Order, and they're fighting each other. And last issue, the second to last issue, the bad Magic Order won. And you knew in the 6th issue the good Magic Order was going to win, and they were just going to use some magical mumbo jumbo to win. And because the bad Magic Order not only won, they like changed all this stuff on Earth. They changed history and did this and wiped out, and they completely redid the Earth and their image. And it's like, they're just going to use magic spell next issue to fix it all. And sure enough, this was the issue where they used magic spells to fix it all. It was kind of like, and don't think they quite pulled it off with this one.
You're a tough customer, Jared Osborne.
I am. I show up to the shop every week and read comics, so you gotta do a good job to. Well, he did get me to buy all 6 issues, so he did a good enough job to do that. So that's not too bad. What was the last comic you had come out?
That I had published?
Yeah. What was your last published comic?
Like a full comic or just like a page?
Either one. What do you got? Tell us something a little bit. What was your last page? You've got some pages coming out in the new Image anthology, right? Issue 2?
Yeah, but that's not coming until like May.
Right.
So I guess the last page I did was Venom 200, which was last year. They gave me one page. So like the last comic I did was #Danger from Ahoy.
Oh, okay. I bought that.
That's
one.
In a trade.
Right.
That's available in trade.
That was a good one. I enjoyed it. I missed the first issue and never got it though. But I have the rest of them. #Danger. Fun, but that was a straightforward book. No, not really a comedy as you're used to doing.
It's funny.
Yeah, there's humor in it, but it's not what you'd call a humor book.
Oh no, here we go with the Jared Osborne strict definitions of what makes something.
They're not strict definitions, they're just definitions. Words mean stuff. It's how we all get on the same page. Chris Giarrusso and his wishy-washy, I don't want to be back.
I would say #Danger is a humor book.
Okay, it's a humor book? All right. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Then it's a humor book. I will go with your definition since you are one of the authors of it.
I gotta say, I've been thinking about your definition our definition conversation last week for the full week. Right. And I mentioned it to other people, and they're all just immediately like, well, what about, how do you say it? Well, when you have this, it's this.
Exactly.
I don't know if you want to go down that road right now.
Like my definition doesn't matter because the definition has changed to include everything.
I went looking for any fraction of your definition corroborated anywhere.
Well, Jeff Vita's blog, because he wrote a definition of sport that is very close to mine. As a matter of fact, is more definitive. So if you want to look that up, look up Jeff Vita's blog.
All right, but so anyway, it's different than Webster's dictionary or Oxford's dictionary.
I know, because the definition has changed. Because what happens especially with those dictionaries is, do you know in the dictionary right now, what is it? Literally now literally means figuratively. They changed the definition because so many people use literally to mean figuratively that they changed the definition.
So if I go searching for the original definition, they're not going to have it?
No, they will somewhere. You can find like I said, look, start with Jeff Vita's blog. Then go see if you can find the definition, because it's in there somewhere. As he's the one who originally got me thinking about the definition of sport years ago and how to define it. But yet sport has grown to be all-inclusive. But hashtag danger is kind of a Challengers of the Unknown comic, isn't it?
Yeah. But if everybody was jerks to each other all the time.
Because that's what Chris knows about, jerks.
Oh, I didn't write it.
I know. Who wrote it? It's for Ahoy Comics, too, right?
Yeah, it's Ahoy Comics. Tom Pyre.
Tom Pyre. Mind the comment. Hello, Jared. Hello, Chris. Jared talks about you ever often. Mostly good.
Mostly good.
I always give you credit for making me a Savage Dragon fan. People always ask me how long I've been reading the Savage Dragon. I'm like, since about issue 70, when I finally said to myself, this has been Chris Giarrusso's favorite comic for 5 years. He's been talking about it. I may as well start reading it. Good evening, Terrence. Comic Crack is here too. And Mind the Comics, I've been redrawing that suit this afternoon. Chris, if you ever need to draw fashion and suits, Mind the Comics here is the guy to. I don't know if you know about my Great Gatsby project I've been working on.
I don't.
I've been. I decided I'm going to make my. You know what it is? I've been the last year and a half maybe. I've been really into the Great Gatsby, and there've been and it came into the public domain in 2020, I think it was. And so there've been like 2 Great Gatsby graphic novels since then, which are both okay. But then I was looking on Amazon and I saw people, since it's in the public domain, people were putting out sort of their own illustrated like just a digital copy of their illustrated version of the Great Gatsby. And they're mostly terrible. And that got me thinking that I want to make my own illustrated version of the Great Gatsby. So that's my project for 2022.
Interesting.
But I just and I show off some of the stuff on my weekly comic book haul video. And in our comic talks that we have Friday nights, Mind the Comics here is always complaining when cartoonists don't get the suits right. When they're drawing a suit, because he knows about suits and fashion, and they don't get it right. And I just and it was one of those cases where I've been trying to figure out what my version of Great Gatsby looks like. And I haven't been able to nail it down yet. And but I think it was last week I finally decided to try and nail it down a little more. And it's one of those cases where do you ever have you're doing a drawing and part of you knows it's wrong, but getting it right is too much work.
Yeah, that's everything I've ever drawn.
So it's like you draw it and you do it and you're not quite happy with it and you put it aside and never quite finish it. That's what happened with me in this Great Gatsby drawing, because I drew the suit all wrong. And part of me knew I was drawing the suit all wrong. We'll have to, but it was just too much work to get it right, and I couldn't deal with it. So when I showed it off on my weekly haul this week, Mind the Comics was like, "Oh my God, you got the suit all wrong." So he gave me instructions on how to get the suit right, which I printed out here. It's on my drawing table. Here are his instructions on how to get the suit right. So that's what I was doing today. I was trying to get the suit right as I drew. But it was like, he was right. In the back of my mind, I knew I was getting it wrong, but getting it right, I was just too much work at the time. So I had to keep moving forward. But then, I got it wrong and was like, I can't do any more work on this. I can't color it because it doesn't look right. So now once I get it right, I can finish the drawing. That's every drawing you've ever done? I don't quite think so.
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain point where you just got to throw in the towel. It's like, do I want to finish something or do I want to get one thing that looks perfect?
Yeah. Well, I'm not even talking perfect. I'm talking right. Because The Great Gatsby is supposed to be in a suit from 1924, and I did not draw a suit from 1924. I drew a suit from 2000. And it didn't look right. And he's supposed to be in high-end tailored suits from 1924. I did not draw a high-end tailored suit from 1924. So the whole thing was a mess. And the drawing was fine. It just didn't look like The Great Gatsby was the main problem. What's that look you're giving the camera?
Sorry, the volume just went way down because the phone started ringing.
The phone started ringing and turned the volume down?
I don't know why it would have affected StreamYard, but it did.
Good question.
Barely hear you. I'm gonna hang up and dial back in.
Okay. Give that a go.
I don't know how.
You don't know how to. You click leave studio, I think. There you go. Chris will be back in a minute. After he tries to get his volume back. Huh. Yeah, here's the new snappier suit so far. We'll have to see how it comes out when it's inked and such things. I'm not sure if it's still right, but I got other stuff to do as well, let's see. Let's bring you up while we wait for Chris. Let's look at another comic. And this one was pretty good. Rogue Sun, issue number 2. Who's our creators on? This one is the Radiant Black Universe. Ryan Parrott is the writer. Abel is the artist, just Abel, A-B-E-L. And Francesco Mortorino's the back. There's a backup story in this. So there's a backup story. I don't know what the backup story is about. It was only a few pages, and oh look, wow, I didn't even notice there was an extra 2. The backup story, I stopped reading there, to be continued. Then it looks like there's another 2 pages of I don't know what, to be continued. Are these just random pages they throw in here? I don't think that's really a backup story if they throw in random pages. That's a little weird. But this is another superhero story. And it's a story of this young man. I don't know if he's a teenager or early 20s, but he just, his father was this superhero rogue son, and he didn't know anything about it. His father, who he's estranged from and doesn't like. The art's pretty solid superhero stuff. And his father died, and he inherited the superhero suit. So now he's trying to, and his superhero suit comes with a ghost of his estranged father. So now when he's in the suit, he has to listen to his father try to teach him how to be a superhero. He is not too happy about that. And who is he fighting in this one? A werewolf vampire. There we go. He was fighting a werewolf vampire in this one. Good evening, Gorvidal. Been enjoying Animal Castle and both European reprints. As you say, it's good stuff. Oh, yeah, Animal Castle, I've heard good things about. I'm going to have to try that one out. I didn't know it was a European reprint. I really wish I could get those European reprints in the graphic album size, but oh well. Let's see if Chris comes. Where is Chris? Up there he is. Chris is back. Can you hear me?
Yes. You're back to regular volume.
I was just showing off another one, Rogue Sun. Do you know the comic Radiant Black?
Is that yours?
No, mine's Radiant Comics.
Oh, okay.
Radiant Black is I just read it's the most successful Image superhero universe since Invincible. And they now have, this is now part of it, Rogues. Radiant Black is only on issue like 13. But hey, 13's a lot of issues these days, I guess.
Yeah.
But they published, I wasn't planning on getting any of the other Radiant Black series. But then they published this thing called Supermassive, which was like an annual size one that had Rogue Sun in it and one of the other superheroes, and it was pretty good. I was like, you know what, I'll try it out then. So their ploy to make a big annual with Radiant Black in it got me to buy other stuff, to try the other stuff and buy it. So good for them.
Cool.
So what's the last regular comic you bought?
Me?
Yeah.
Savage
Dragon's still on your pull list, right?
Savage Dragon, Usagi Yojimbo.
Okay. I don't issue with that in there. Have you been buying
a lot of
Ant?
stuff from the Huh?
Have you been buying Ant?
Yeah. Have you?
Yes, I have been.
Oh.
I like.
Nice to meet it's nice to meet the other guy.
Yeah, what is that? I like his drawing style, and he's doing something a little different.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, but like every page I look at it, I'm like, I think this is cool, and I know nobody else would agree.
I know what you mean. It's amazing that Spawn is having a revival.
Amazing how?
Amazing how in that 10 years ago, it was selling 10,000 copies a month. Since issue 300, it's been over 100,000 copies a month. That's pretty amazing.
Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, since issue 300, he got a lot of attention. He started doing a lot of variant covers, and he made the book returnable. And it's also the reason I'm buying it for the first time is the last of the $2.99 comics. So I figure there's some duty I have to buy it to support the $2.99 comics. But now he's got 3 other companion books, but I'm only buying the main book.
Yeah, I knew he was expanding. I didn't realize that it was like, I didn't realize it had taken any kind of a dip.
Oh yeah, the Spawn comics from 10 years ago now are worth money. They go for like $10-$20 a piece because the print runs were so low. And some of the he was doing alternate covers in that period too, and some of the alternate covers from that period are worth money. Like when there was one time where he was doing, I forget when it was probably like 7-8 years ago. He was doing piggyback covers to his own Spider-Man covers. By the way, speaking of definitions, that's one of my new definitions.
What?
Piggyback covers. Piggyback covers. All those homage covers that piggyback on you liking some other cover. So I now call them all piggyback covers.
Okay. So, and everyone knows what you're talking about when you say that word.
That's why I got to explain it every time. Now you know what I'm talking about when I say.
That's what's great is the way language, like everyone's speaking the same thing. They all understand the same thing.
But
no one's just creating words out of thin air.
Right. You could figure it out from context, though. If I were to say he was doing a lot of piggyback covers, from context, you could probably figure it out.
No.
No,
not with you. I know I have to ask because I could be close, but I still like if I'm not 100% perfect.
Well, it's always
And
good to
I will get dinged. I will get flagged.
But I just like the sound of it. It's more honest to me, a piggyback cover, because that's what it's doing. It's not an it's not an homage. You're piggyback. You want a little popularity yourself. Why not do a callback to something that's popular? That to me is in the recipes of how to be popular, which of course I can't do because I'm, but one of the recipes for how to be popular is glom onto something that's already popular.
For sure.
And
I mean, that's people always want that for me. Like they want to see the mini Marvel version of a famous cover.
Right.
I've done that trick many times myself.
Mm-hmm.
But never. Well, actually, a couple of times. I had a couple of books printed that way. I did G.I. Joe #1 was an exclusive at Ultimate Comics in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Ah. Walking Dead #1 you did a alternate cover for, right?
Yeah, all the image books, yeah.
Right.
And it looks like at the time when I did that 10 years ago for the 20th anniversary, I did a Shadowhawk cover, but then they ended up they couldn't use it because there was no Shadowhawk book. But now they're going to finally use it.
Oh.
Allegedly.
There's a Shadowhawk book?
There's a new Shadowhawk book coming out, The Last Shadowhawk.
Ah. I don't think I've ever read Shadowhawk. Or if I did, I only read it once or twice many, many years ago and don't remember.
Yeah. Like he didn't stick around.
No, he was
but when Image first launched, like a lot of people were saying that was the best book.
Yeah. He was a HIV positive superhero, right? Was that Shadowhawk?
Yeah, and I think he died. So then there was a new Shadowhawk.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember that. I still find it amazing that Valentino became a hot superhero artist. When he, like I said, I knew him from the 80s as one of those, Bigfoot autobiographical cartoonists. And he did Normal Man.
What does Bigfoot mean?
Bigfoot just means cartoony. You'd be a Bigfoot artist.
Okay, because I've heard people say that before, and I'm like, what does that mean?
It literally means your characters have big feet. Because if you look at Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny and all those cartoon type characters, they all have big feet. Okay.
Well, then I'm going to disagree with being put into that category myself.
Okay. You might. I don't know if you. It's a term you don't really hear much anymore.
I heard it. Remember when was it Cliff Biggers?
Oh yeah.
The comic shop news guy that would just like he was so angry it wasn't Fred Hembeck. Do you remember that?
I remember something about that.
You would tease me about it. He's like, yeah, this guy, he's still angry. You're not Fred Hembeck. Like it was sacrilegious for them to let anybody else in the door to do something cartoony.
Right. I remember that now. Huh. Fred Hembeck. He did a lot of stuff for Marvel Age, I remember.
That's where I first saw him was Marvel Age.
I remember he used to put out a magazine in the early 80s that I would get. Bah Hembeck. I remember I showed him to you, I think, years and years ago.
Yeah, I think Image did like a big phone book collection of all that stuff.
Yeah. I went, and I always loved them back then. But I went to reread them, I don't know, a few years ago. I couldn't read the lettering. I was like, somebody needs to re-letter this so my old eyes can read it.
Oh, is it too small?
It's too small and it's all jammed together.
Yeah.
I don't remember
he was basically writing essays. He was basically writing essays with little faces around them, right?
Right. He would, and the balloons would be jammed with stuff. And when I was 18, I don't remember it phasing me one bit.
Yeah.
But I went to reread it and I just couldn't.
Was that were you digging out the originals or just looking at the were they oversized?
Yeah. They are. They're magazine size. Maybe a little narrower than magazine size. I don't remember, but yeah. But still, they're just jammed with words. And like I said, he was those magazines were like the equivalent of a comic website these days.
Right.
Well, that making fun of comics, telling stories about comics, bringing comics that, or a YouTube video. They were the equivalent of a YouTube video about comics. All the stuff we can do now with video, he did by drawing it and jamming essays into the balloons.
Yeah.
Speaking of Spawn, I got the new issue of Spawn this week.
Have you been reading it?
Yeah, still only $2.99. And it has gotten better because the last few issues are written by Rory McConville. And not Todd McFarlane's been writing Gunslinger Spawn. And the art's okay. There's some big Spawn war going on, but there's always a big Spawn war going on between heaven and hell.
Yeah, it's the battle for the soul of humanity.
Yeah, that's still going on. And let me show. What's funny is there's one of the new books is Gunslinger Spawn. And in here was somebody I thought was Gunslinger Spawn because he was a cowboy, but then he died. I guess I was like, oh, I guess that's not Gunslinger Spawn. That's some other Spawn. I'm like, which Spawn is that? There's like so many Spawns now in this book because
Cowboy
I didn't
Spawn.
read it. I only know from reading. I think I've been reading it for about a year now. So right around issue 300, I think he did something where all these Spawns that were throughout the universe all came back to Earth. So now there's like 1 million Spawns on Earth, 100 Spawns on Earth of all different types. What did he say?
Spawnerverse.
Neil Adams is one I've heard say Bigfoot artist about his early work. Yeah. Neil Adams' generation definitely used that term. Jared, Chris, do you read any manga? I don't read any on the regular.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have time to read much of anything, but I read a lot of Dragon Ball Z like 20 years ago.
Oh my goodness, the bullpen was full of Dragon Ball Z fans.
Yeah. It was awesome.
There were discussions all day. I think it was when the cartoon was coming out, right?
Yeah.
And there were discussions all day on who could beat up who in Dragon Ball Z. Could Goku's the only name I remember.
I don't remember discussions like that taking all day. I mean, once in a while they'd come up and they might be like, well, what if Goku beat, Thor
maybe it just
Superman?
Seemed to me like it was all day.
Yeah.
And it was really 20 minutes, but the conversation came up a lot.
We talk a lot about what happened on last night's episode or whatever.
Oh, that too. Yeah, there was that too. Oh man, did you see that? This guy did that, and that guy did this. I just remember a lot of Dragon Ball Z coming up. Like one of my favorites I still have over there. Let me show you. Like I like one-offs when it comes to manga, and like if I hear a one-off is good, like All You Need Is Kill, I really enjoyed this one, which is what the Tom Cruise movie is based on.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow. All You Need Is Kill is, I don't know if that's a weird translation or what, but this was really good. But it's only one volume, so I don't know if it counts as me reading manga. Did Julio ever tell you about how they read manga in Japan from his time over there?
I don't know. I don't think so.
He was telling me once. I remember.
Invite him into this.
I would, but I don't hear from him ever. Well, want me to send him an email? Where's his email?
If you can,
I could.
He could explain it. You could get it from right from the source.
He'll never come on. Let's see. I'm going to send him an invite because Chris. Oh, I don't want share. I want invite. Email.
Oh yeah. He might not want to come on in public.
Yeah, he probably won't.
Just tell him how many people are watching.
11. I don't know how many. Let's see. 6.
Yeah. Do you leave these up though for other people to see?
Yeah, like they're up forever. Usually about 75 to 100 people ever watch them.
That might be enough to scare Mr. Jules off.
Oh yeah, it will. I'm going to send him an invite anyway because you said so.
Yeah, he's not coming. I'm sorry. I retract.
All right,
I retract the suggestion.
But anyway, what he said.
So how do they read? How do they read in Japan?
Because everybody's apartment is small. They have used bookstores where they go in and buy all the volumes of manga that they want to read and then return them when they're done. But Julio was like, I'm keeping mine. I love that movie and forgot it was based off manga. Yeah, I liked the movie too. I think the manga is even better.
You know how they read things in the States?
They don't.
They buy what they want to read, and then when they're done, what they do is like they'll go, oh, I'll go take this to the secondhand bookstore, and I'll sell it. I'll turn it in.
No one takes their comics to the secondhand bookstore. What are you talking about?
Tell that to the secondhand bookstore I go to get comics all the time at. I'll show you what I got today.
What'd you get?
Speaking of comics, I'll be right back.
Hey, what's going on? My security settings prevented the Wacom software from posting an event. Good, because I don't have a Wacom hooked up.
All right.
What do you got there? Thorion, the New Gods? Oh, that's one of those amalgams?
Yeah. I like to get these whenever I see them because they're not going to come back in print until Disney buys out Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
That price tag.
There's a price tag, 25 cents. 35 cents.
35 cents. So that's an awesome John Romita Jr. art. And then we got some classic Walt Simonson.
There we go.
And what else? I always buy these things, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read this again. And then they sit in a pile.
Martial Law.
I've never read this, but I read a Martial Law Savage Dragon crossover from like 20 years ago.
Okay. Do you have a chair that you read in?
No.
See,
I mean,
I find
not a specific comic book chair. I mean, I usually do sit.
Like this easy chair behind me is usually where I sit. So right next to it over there, I have a A magazine. I have books down here. I have magazine cases. These are the books I'm currently reading. And I put the comics in the one that's up there, too. Can't pull it down. It's got other stuff on. So I find having them near the chair. If I don't have them near the chair, I never read them.
Big enough?
There is.
Randy Green's on his way out.
See you, Randy.
But he's gonna play a quick game of Galaxian before he goes.
You've got an actual Galaxian machine.
I didn't tell you this story.
I remember you mentioning it, but I didn't hear the story itself.
I won it.
Oh, you won it?
Yeah.
How did you win it?
I go to my friends and I, Smitty, my friend John McLaren, go to this privately owned arcade, Wieners and Losers, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, on a regular basis.
Yep.
And a couple of years ago, my friend John entered me into a tournament without my knowledge, which all that meant was just I had to play play a few games against some other guys or whatever. And I won that tournament. So last month, they got all the champions from the last 4 years from this Wieners and Losers tournament in a tournament of champions.
Right.
And I was like, okay, that'll be fun. I'll probably get crushed because, I'm sure these guys are champions.
Right. I'm just some guy who got lucky.
Yeah. Well, I got lucky again. And unbeknownst to any of us, we were all playing for the grand prize of an actual Galaxian arcade machine.
Wow.
So now it's here in the studio.
What games were you playing in order to win this?
Well, he did a random selection of like, I don't know, he had like 150 or 200 games in the place. So they randomly selected 4, and then of those 4, we got to choose 2, depending on like who got the trivia question right gets to choose the game. They did it exactly like an episode. I don't know if you remember. There was an arcade game. There's an arcade game show in the 80s called Starrcade.
Okay, I remember the name. I don't know if I ever saw it.
So most people recognize the name as a wrestling event.
Oh.
The WCW used to do
a wrestling event like that too.
Yeah, but before it was a wrestling show, it was an arcade game show.
Right.
Hosted by Jeff Edwards. And so they just ran it like like the same format as that. Like the contestants do trivia questions, and then the winner will pick the game that they play, and then you play for like a minute or 2 minutes or something, and whoever gets the highest score after a minute or two, they win. Final round was playing a game of Galaxian on the grand prize game itself. And fate was good to me that day.
You won the grand prize. Now, have you played these games a lot? Are you good at them? Because I don't think I could win a video game contest.
I didn't think I could win either. Like, I don't play them a lot. I only play when we go to this retro arcade. I'm not a modern gamer. I don't have any what do you call those things? Like, I don't have any PlayStations or Xboxes or any of that. I never did any of that. So when we go to this retro arcade, it's awesome. It's like time travel.
Did you play a lot
I usually
back then
play
in the 80s?
Huh?
Did you play a lot back then in the 80s?
I mean, not a ton. I mean, I played as much as I could, but I was a kid and I didn't have any money. So, I'd play. We go to the mall and I might play like 8 games.
Okay. I was just curious. I mean,
yeah. So, his arcade has like 150 games, and they're all up to like I think up to like 84 or 85. I forget what the cutoff is. But he doesn't have the stuff. He doesn't have Tetris. Like it's
right. Interesting.
So there's a lot of weird games I never heard of, and just it's like, okay, I don't want to like. Sometimes it's like, let me just try this goofy game or whatever, and then you play it, for a few minutes, and then I'm like, I don't want to spend the rest of the day trying to figure out how to play this or figuring out how to get good at it. So I'll usually play like the same 5 or 6 games every time I go.
Okay. So that gave you an edge. You knew how to play.
No, it didn't. It didn't. It handicapped me, but it handicapped everybody the same way because like you wind up playing a game you never heard of.
Okay.
You know, like
Speaking of Walter Simonson, I dug out my copy of. Have you ever seen this? The Marvel Fumetti book.
I don't know if I've ever seen it, but I think I've heard you talk about it.
Okay. Well, it's the printing on it is god awful terrible. And I mentioned this because I think I mentioned it last week. I mean, you can barely see anything in a lot of these photo panels.
Now, are these just photo? Like I'm looking at it on my phone, so it's it's smaller than poster stamp.
Fumetti is a comic strip made out of photographs.
Are those all photos from the Marvel offices?
This is photos from the Marvel offices. It's got who's everybody in it? Archie Goodwin, Denny O'Neil, Larry Hama, Louise Jones, Bob Budiansky, Danny Fingeroth, and who else is in here? Walt Simonson, Terry Austin is in a page, Stan Lee. But I was looking through them. This smells like an old comic. See, that smell doesn't do anything for me. It makes me go, this thing's rotting. Like you can barely see Spider-Man there. And I was posting on Facebook about it, and I was saying something. I wonder if any of this exists where they could remaster it. Because I think it would be cool to have a version we can actually see the photos on, not on. And a lot of Elliot Brown took some of the photos, who I'm sure still has his archived because he puts stuff up on he's got Elliot Brown has a website where he posts his old Marvel photos. But a lot of them were taken by Vince Colletta. I mean, and he died decades ago. So I don't know.
What a coincidence!
Who would have Vince Coletta's photos?
A guy known for being terrible at inking would be also terrible at photography.
Well, no, it's not the photography that's terrible.
I know. I'm making a cheap joke.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't get it.
I know. I already saw the flaw in the premise as I was saying it.
But anyway, the best one is this Inker Dinker Do starring Terry Austin, which is actually a good comic strip. It's him drawing something and then the drawing sucking him into the drawing on the drawing table. So this one was actually the best one because it was very much a comic. But Walter wrote on Facebook because there's a Walt Simonson has a one-pager in here that he stars in. And he said that years after it came out, someone gave him the paste-up page of photos. So that lets me know that they never archived the actual paste-up of the photos. They archived anything, it would be the film. Fumetti is the Italian word for comics. It means smoky, referring to the speech balloons look like they're coming out of the mouth. Oh, okay.
Did you see speech balloons?
Here in the U.S., Fumetti means photo comics. I don't know why. Yeah, Mind the Comics is from Portugal, so he doesn't know to call them word balloons.
I thought you were saying it.
No, I was just reading his.
Okay. Forgiven.
But then somebody chimed in. I don't know who it was that chimed in on the thread that said, I didn't know this about the Fumetti book. The reason it printed so terribly is they used the wrong line screen to convert the photos. The printer did, accidentally. And there was a big issue about it where Marvel was going to, because it printed so badly, that Marvel was going to make them returnable. But they never did because it sold well. Hey, there's Paulo.
Hello.
Hello there, Paulo. Good evening.
Good evening.
Chris, this is Paulo. Paulo,
Hi.
Chris.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. Big fan. Used to love your mini Marvels back when I read Marvel.
All right. Thanks.
And I was just talking about the Marvel Fumetti book. Have you ever seen this one?
Not in real life.
1983. The printing is absolutely terrible.
Yeah, well.
But I just found out when I posted something about it on Facebook, a guy chimed in who I didn't recognize that said that the printer used the wrong line screen when going from photos to the printing plates. And it came out so badly that Marvel was going to make it returnable. They thought there'd be a big kerfuffle about it because it just printed it. But it turned out it sold well and no one cared. So they never made it return. But it wasn't supposed to look this bad.
Mm. That had newsstand distribution, didn't it?
Yes. Had news. As a matter of fact, yeah, this one is direct. 1983, I'm pretty sure it did.
I wonder, would people on the newsstands see that book and this looks interesting? I don't see it.
Who knows?
Well, maybe if you stuck it next to Mad Magazine.
But I didn't realize Vince Colletta took a lot of the photos.
Oh.
And Art Adams did a lot of the special effects on it. 1983, was Art Adams working in the bullpen then or something?
Okay, so Longshot was 2 years after that?
Yeah, I don't think he'd been drawing anything yet. Bill Sienkiewicz did some of the special effects on this one. Special effects, Arthur Adams. But like I said, I was thinking about if they could make like a remastered version of this, but I don't know if they could.
Oh, you'd have to develop the film again.
No, if they still have what it is they pasted the photos down on board.
Mm-hmm.
And Walter Simonson said a few years later they gave him, he's got somewhere his page of pasted photos.
Okay.
So you could actually scan that in and print from it. But if they gave him his, that means all the others are scattered to the wind.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows where any of the and I'm sure like Elliot Brown took some of the photos. I'm sure he's got a website where he posts photos from his days at Marvel. He was a bullpenner and I think he worked in editorial eventually. But I'm sure he has his archived somewhere. But Vince Colletta, who knows what happened? When did Vince Colletta die? The 90s?
Around there, maybe.
I don't even know.
I doubt his son knows that. He even knows if he had the negatives for his photos.
Yeah. Who knows? But so I guess that they can never do a remastered version of this unless they had the photos, or they could, if they had the film with the wrong line screen, maybe they could scan it in today somehow and print it out. I don't know. I'm sure that when Ike was going through the warehouse looking for stuff to throw out, he probably threw out the film to this. He didn't want it around.
Yeah, it's embarrassing to see Stan Lee doing that.
Okay, another comic I got this week. A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance, number 6. This one continues to be good. But I thought number 5 ended with a cliffhanger. And number 6 didn't begin with a cliffhanger. I'm going to go back to number 5 and see how it ended. Because I think number 5 ended with the woman he was trying to protect getting shot. and him in a car crash, and this assassin was coming up on him. But at the beginning of this, he's in this camp hiding out, and the assassin hasn't found him. And I'm like, what happened? I have to go back and see. I picked up a copy a few years ago and was so disappointed. You could barely make out the faces. Exactly. That's the Marvel Fumetti book. And that's why I really wish they could do a remastered version of it, just from a historical perspective. Just so we could get a glimpse of what that was supposed to look like. I mean, it was all the people at Marvel in 1983. Araujo. Did I don't know.
Yes, you're doing it right now.
All right. That's another thing, Chris. You'll find out that Paulo teaches me how to pronounce all the European names correctly in the comics that I mangle.
Because I used to be a sports writer for a motorsport magazine, and I had to know how to pronounce the name of all the foreign GT racers, especially when I noticed I was mangling the guys from Eastern Europe.
It's really tough for me to go from that A to the U. It really is. It's amazing how tough it is to go from that A to the U, just because I'm not used to it somehow.
Just pronouncing Paulo right. I get it. I know I'm every time in my I'm saying it out loud. I'm like I'm saying it wrong, and I don't know what the right way to say it is. Is it Paulo or Paulo or?
It's Paulo. Yeah, it's like in Italian. It's Paulo. It's like in Italian, but with an AU instead of an AO.
He still doesn't get it.
Yeah,
it's Paul with an O on the end of it. That's like the best I can do.
Yeah, it's Paulo.
Paulo.
It's Pau, like in the sound effects in the Batman 1966 TV show, and Lu.
Paulo.
Yeah, perfect.
Paulo. Oh, I can do that.
He doesn't have that. It's not Paulo. He doesn't have that AU because it's no. Which language is Araujo in?
It's now? Portuguese, but the accent on AU makes it a different syllable.
Okay.
And in my name, it's a diphthong.
That's right. There's an accent. When there's an accent over the U, it means you pronounce it by itself.
Yeah, if it's two vowels in a row,
right,
it should be a diphthong. But if one of the letters has an accented character, then it's a different syllable.
It's tricky.
It also applies in French.
What was that?
It also applies in French.
Oh, okay. A Righteous Thirst for Vengeance is a good book. You should pick that one up when it comes out in trade.
Yeah, I haven't bought anything in English in a while, and nowadays when I do, I try to go for old stuff. This type of public of comics, although they might be more interesting for in Europe for the publishers because they can publish straight into trade paperback. They're probably going to disappear in the next few years because there's a lot less interest in publishing Marvel and DC. They're charging more for the license,
right?
So, and since Marvel is the one that pulls everything together in terms of American comics abroad, if publishers lose an interest in Marvel, they lose an interest in everything else.
Yep. Tit Goblin would pick up a book about the slice of life daily tasks of the bullpen. I love comics about the art, the craft, the industry.
Or you could read
his next project.
Yeah. Well, or you could read Hey Kids comics.
That was a good. I remember. I forgot about that one. I enjoyed that. Chris will really have a comic that won't sell if he makes that one.
Make what?
A slice of life of the daily tasks of the bullpen. Comic.
Yeah, we talked about this before, but I always feel like that. Just that scenario would have been perfect for a sitcom.
It would have made a good reality show.
Yeah.
I'd like to try a Mad Men type TV series where everybody would smoke and drink whiskey in copious amounts.
Well, if you go like 10 years before we were there, it would be everyone's on coke.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank
and in
God
the TV
for
series,
Batman.
and in the TV series, the two women at the job would be sexually harassed by everybody coming in through the door.
Yeah, and
It would have.
also the third Newhart show, Bob, was about a comic book company.
Mm-hmm.
They did a pretty good job getting the atmosphere right. Have you ever seen that one?
No.
I've never seen that. I
Came
heard
out in
Jim
the
Lee
early-
was on it.
Yeah, it came out in the early 90s in a comic book company. They had a bullpen there too. And they only lasted one season. Had one of my favorite lines ever in it from Stephen Wright, where I think it was their Thanksgiving episode, and Stephen Wright was their cab driver. So they're doing a balloon. I forget what the name of the character was. They Bob Newhart had like a famous cartoon character, like Underdog.
Was it Mad Dog?
Was it Mad Dog? Yeah, it may have been Mad Dog. Now that you mention it, but they were having a Thanksgiving balloon of Mad Dog that year, and somehow I think it was the balloon gotten away, and they were jumping in a cab and telling the cab driver to follow that balloon. And the cab driver was Stephen Wright, and in his deadpan delivery, they go, follow that cab or whatever, and he looks at them and goes, "Hold on. I saw this in a cartoon once, and I think I can do it." And I just love that line. I saw this in a cartoon once, and I think I can do it. Oh, the Bob episodes are on YouTube.
All right.
Tit Goblin tells us. Okay,
Good.
so check that one out. Yeah, that one takes place in a bullpen. Not quite slice of life, but...
Stephen Wright, wasn't he the guy who played Veer in Babylon 5?
I have no idea. I haven't seen Babylon 5 in a long, long time, and I didn't only watched some of it.
Half of the guys from Babylon 5 are dead.
Yeah?
Yeah. They had heart. Yeah, they had heart attacks or were run over by cars or something.
Run over by cars.
While having heart attacks.
The next comic I got this week, The Department of Truth, issue 17. Image 30th anniversary. There's the over here. Chris was just telling us he did a Shadowhawk cover for the Image 20th anniversary that never got published because there wasn't a Shadowhawk book. But he's told it's going to get published now. This we get
I hope I didn't jinx it by saying this publicly.
Like you could get any more jinxed. Come on. This gives us a little taste of the origin. Well, it gives us takes place during the Nixon administration. Have you ever seen the book The Department of Truth, Chris?
No.
It's a book where that the conceit of the book is that if enough people believe in a conspiracy, it becomes true and rewrites history. So
that would explain a lot of what's going on today.
So the Department of Truth tries to stop people from believing crazy conspiracies. And the head of the Department of Truth is Lee Harvey Oswald. And this is, and sometimes like each issue will deal with like a different conspiracy or something. But this issue flashes back to when was Nixon elected? 68? Mm-hmm. Flashes back to 68 after Nixon was elected. And they're informing him of the Department of Truth. And the old head of the Department of Truth was, what's his name? I think, who's the director who did A Wonderful Life? Capra? Yes, Capra, Mr. Capra. He was the old head of the Department of Truth, and Nixon puts Lee Harvey Oswald in charge. So this is about the sort of exchange of power at the head of the Department of Truth. Some really nice art in this one. Very straightforward, because the art sometimes gets real wacky and wild. But this he had a lot of really good straightforward storytelling in this one. Sort of lots of 6-panel, 3-panel, sort of standard storytelling, but well done. Down where I live, the Department of Truth not only earn its money, but demand a raise. And Sleepy Reader says that was a different guy in Babylon 5.
I think he's like 10 minutes behind.
It happens.
Yeah. Hi, Gore. So when does it get revealed that Elvis is an alien?
I don't know. You know what? I can't even remember if they dealt with Elvis or not. And there's been so many individual conspiracies that I don't even know.
We need Elvis and Princess Diana.
But this is one where I read the first trade on Hoopla and then put it on my pull list. So I still need issues and I got like a 6th printing of issue 1. I think they came out with a special like around issue 10. So I got the first issue. QAnon country, yes. That's where Gore Vidal lives, in QAnon country. Absolutely, Sleeper. Surprisingly, among many educators. Wow. Yeah. Sometimes conspiracies can get anyone. They really can. So have you read anything interesting lately, Paulo?
Not this week. No, I need to use my free time to write for the Car magazine.
One thing I did read this week. Let me pull it up from over here. I reread Louis Riel.
Ooh.
You ever read this one?
No.
By Chester Brown?
I see it around often.
If you like history, it's good. It's Canadian history, and I know nothing about Canadian history. So, and it's funny, I heard him referenced twice last week as I was reading this in TV or whatever. I was like, oh, look at that, Louis Riel, because he's a famous person in Canadian history. He was sort of, if we go back in Canadian history, before the West was part of Canada, there was something called he's got maps in it. There was Canada, which was was like the East Coast. And then there was something called Rupert's Land, which was like the whole middle of Canada. In 1670, the King of England granted Rupert's Land to a fur trading enterprise called the Hudson Bay Company. So it's like the Hudson Bay Company owned all of all of that stuff in the center. Mm-hmm. And so
economic exploration by royal decree.
Right. So the people living there were called the Métis, Metis, and they were of French and native ancestry. They get called half-breeds throughout the whole book. And so when Canada wanted to take over that half, they were like, whoa, and they already had their own government and organization. And when Canada wanted to take over that part of the country, they were like, whoa, what? Because they didn't want to hear from these Métis, whatever they're. I don't know how to say it in French. Métis.
Yes, it's silent, even if it's plural.
Okay.
It comes from the same root as mestizo.
Okay.
So half-breed, mixed.
So, and it's all about his history, and he gets caught up kind of being a leader of the Métis. And there's a couple of almost battles and this and that, and he eventually gets, and it takes place over 20 or 30 years. And it's really, if you like history, it's good stuff. But what I find weird too is how small it is on the page. I mean, they could have blown those up. But Chester Brown works in a funny way. Have you ever seen his working method? He draws one panel at a time on typing paper and then pastes them together. At least he did 20 years ago. I don't know if he ever learned to use drawing paper or not. but he'd draw one panel on a piece of typing paper and then glue them all together. So, but he's an excellent storyteller, and I really enjoyed this. I first read it. When did it come out? 2003. So I probably read it around 2003. So I haven't read it in a long, long time, but it's good stuff. Paulo, I told Jared in the chat I've been enjoying Animal Castle and the Killer Affairs of the State by Jacqueline and Mats.
Yeah, I gotta buy Animal Castle. We have a Portuguese edition in the proper size. So
you haven't seen that one pop up. I think Comic Crack likes it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you ever check out Louis Riel, if you ever get a chance, if you like historical and want to learn something about the history of Canada too, because I knew nothing about the history of Canada. And one of the most interesting things I read in this took place in like one or two panels, explaining the difference between the French way of dividing land and the English way of dividing land, and how the Métis didn't like it, because the French way of dividing land is in long strips that go down to the river. And the English way of dividing land is in squares. So in the French way, everybody has river access. So all of a sudden, these people who had river access were losing their river access, and they weren't happy about it, even if they were even getting the land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we divided the captaincies of Brazil the same way. A bunch of straight lands going inland to the west from the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, I have no idea how we did it here, but probably the English way. I would
guess. The 13 colonies are kind of divided horizontally.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of natural barriers that divided the original states.
Mm-hmm. Although I suppose that in Canada it makes sense to divide the land vertically because of the access to the plains from Hudson Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't actually walk from Labrador and Newfoundland to where Ottawa is, or Toronto.
Mm-hmm. Louis Riel, good stuff. I haven't seen. Has Chester Brown done anything in years? I don't think I've seen anything from him. I'm trying to remember.
Nothing that I remember seeing around.
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know what he's been working on.
Well, Ted Goblin's a fan. Do you have more books from him?
Yeah, he did. Let's see. I have a few different versions of Brown's work, and it's interesting how his individual panels lend themselves to different formatting. Yeah, the books are different, even though they're. Oh, okay. The books read. Okay, so they must have reformatted them. Yeah, he did a book in the '80s that everything comes from called Yummy Fur, and it's this crazy wild book. But after he did Yummy Fur, he started doing individual graphic novels like Louis Riel, which I think has something to do with a grant from the Canadian government too. They support comic artists and have them do graphic novels. So I think this one may have something to do with a grant from the Canadian government. And I've seen a few of the Canadian comic book artists have that in there. The publisher gratefully acknowledges the Canada Council for the Arts for its support in this edition. So, yeah, he's part of that Chester Brown, Joe Matt, and Seth triumvirate of Canadian cartoonists, even though I don't think Joe Matt is Canadian. He was just living up there in Montreal. Yeah, that wasn't, Chester Brown I read was paying for it. Kind of creepy stuff. Yeah, that was about his his pro-prostitution comic. It's kind of interesting. It's about his personal life and how he hires prostitutes. And that's the way he likes it. So, yeah, I remember reading Paying for It. I think I have Paying for It up there somewhere. up on my shelf over there. My shorter book indie bookshelf is up over there above my computer monitor over that side. Another book I got this week is Cerebus the Emily.
Okay.
With do you know who Emily Strange is?
I think so.
A popular children's book from 15 years ago.
Oh.
Hold on. Let me get I'll show you the book itself. I have one just because they're so nice. Here we go. I think here's Emily's Secret Book of Strange. I got this because it's so nicely printed. If you look there, they do all this stuff with gloss, like Secret. See if you see Secret there. That's written only in gloss. So, and they have all these secret runes at the beginning.
Right.
And there she is.
Okay.
It's like this little goth kids book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, why Dave Sim decided to parody it all these years later when I'm sure only a small percentage of comic book fans even know what it is.
I think he's trying to tell the 500 or 1,000 or so readers he still has that they're idiots.
But this was actually a pretty good issue, I have to say. I don't remember if you remember my critique of the last issue that I didn't like. Mm-hmm. The last issue was filled with... It was the one that parodied Spider-Man's black costume. It was all these superheroes in black costumes getting dark jokes. So it was kind of like, these jokes are 40 years old. Right.
Yeah, it kind of looks that way. It's like Dave Simmons has nothing left to say in his old age, but he still wants to keep saying it.
No, some of the strips are actually good. I will say, I mean, I buy it because I enjoy it. And like there were some good strips in this one. But they're not, it's hit or miss. And you have to like the comic strip format or you're never going to like it. I don't think Cerebus the Emily is going to be a hot seller. No, I do not think so. And this is copy 1035 out of 1649. So 1649 is a pretty low print run for Cerebus. Can't remember if there's much recent Brown stuff with the publisher Drawing Corner re-releases stuff regularly. Oh, okay. Stuff I bought recently has been a newish publication reprint. Yeah, I know that they just reprinted a Seth book. Oh, George Sprott, I saw, was reprinted in a softcover volume like 10 years later. You're saying Jeff is an idiot, Paulo?
Well, you wouldn't be if you had waited for the trade.
That's okay. Scott usually calls me an idiot every month for buying Spawn. So.
But we trade waiters. We're the smart ones.
I don't know. I think they are making trades of Cerebus and Hell, but I wouldn't. You don't want to read like this is best read an issue at a time, or it's just comic strip. Sit down and reading 400 pages of it. No, thank you.
Like the Cerebus phone books.
I don't think you want to.
Although you could argue that as soon as Cerebus coalesces in what it was eventually became, there's a long form narrative there.
Yeah.
And nowadays there's just no. I don't think Dave Sim is even thinking that way.
No. Though I still want to read. What was that one he started that someone else finished? The Strange Death of Alex Raymond. I still want to get that one because I was buying it, reading it in Glamour Puss, and it was really good. It was the best part of because Glamour Puss was half Dave Sim practicing drawing and making some sort of social critique of women's magazines, which was the same social critique of women's magazines that everybody has. and half The Strange Death of Alex Raymond, which was really good. Drawn and Quarterly's bookstore in Quebec is a great way to visit if anyone ever gets a great. Okay, I didn't know they had a bookstore, but I like their books. That's for sure. I'm gonna have to check it because I used to get Drawn and Quarterly magazine in the '90s. I'll have to check and see if I have all the issues or if I'm missing some. How's the drawing going, Chris, or the inking, or the coloring? What are you working on?
Too slow. I'm behind schedule, so no matter how fast I'm going, I'm still going to be late.
Are you doing the coloring now or the inking?
Inking.
Inking? Okay. Are you doing it digitally too?
Yeah, I'm doing it all on my iPad.
Oh, okay. Doing it in Procreate?
Yep.
Oh, cool. Why don't you hold up some of it for us to see? Show us a good panel.
I don't know if you'll be able to see it.
Have to get it at the right angle. Oh, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
We can see it. Here, we'll put you big for a moment. There's what he's working on.
Oh, that's nice.
This is Officer Clawsome.
Yeah.
He's a lobster, so hence the claws mixed with awesome. Coming in 2023 from, who's your publisher?
HarperCollins.
HarperCollins.
Ooh. Now HarperCollins is the big time, not Marvel.
Yeah. Everyone's chasing that Captain Underpants money.
Yeah.
You know, when you achieve mainstream success in comics that have mainstream distribution, it's kind of the same as the book industry.
Yeah.
You have those top sellers, and then everything way down here.
Yeah.
Like I was watching I was looking at some sales figures in France. Like there was one year whenever there's a new Asterix book, sells 2 million copies.
Yeah.
And then the second bestseller of the year, 80,000. So from 2 million to 80,000.
That is some drop. Sleepy Reader says it looks great, Chris.
Yeah.
And he's asking
Thank you.
Is there any reason to draw in blue when drawing digitally?
It's personal preference, really. At that point, it's still like I'm still used to tuning out the blue when I'm going in with black.
Mm-hmm.
It's familiar. You don't have to. I know some people, even on paper. I know people that pencil in green or orange instead of blue. Yeah. I don't know if it's because their eyes, if it's easier on their eyes for some reason. But
I find
you can also adjust. On every layer, you can adjust the opacity or so that it like drops out or whatever. It took me a while to figure that. Like it took me a while to learn Procreate and learn how to like use it the way I wanted. Like, it was slow going at first, but now I'm faster on this thing than I am with paper.
It's a good program. I'm certainly not faster on it than I am on paper, but it does CMYK now. It does all sorts of stuff it didn't do 5 years ago. It's kind of amazing what can be done in it these days. But like whenever I'm like, I most often draw digitally when I'm using a photo reference, and I'll draw right over top of a photo. And for some reason, when I do that, I like to draw in red. Probably because I can see it best. But it's just one of those things. But it's like I've never drawn much in non-photo blue. I ink over non-photo blue all the time because I print things out. But I never got the hang of drawing in it. Drawing on it. Officer Clawsome. Written by Brian Smitty Smith.
Brian Smitty Smith. Oh. Author of the currently successful series PB&J.
PB&J.
which is kid stuff. Not something you go to a comic book store for.
Speaking of kid stuff, I just got my Greg Schiegel newsletter today. Greg Schiegel is another friend of ours who we worked at Marvel with, and he's been doing YA graphic novels too. Mm-hmm. And you can what's the name of his? It's over there. What is it?
He had a graphic novel series called Pix.
Pix,
teenage fairy princess. He's currently doing Superhero Universe.
Oh, that's
Animal
right.
Superheroes.
And he has an email newsletter, and his email newsletter today, he comes out once a month, I think. He was showing you how to break down a page of comics. So he was giving you some inside baseball look at comics when he'd show you his breakdowns and storytelling layouts for a page he's doing. So sign up for Greg Schiegel's newsletter. If I knew how to spell his name, I'd tell you, but it's
go to HatterEntertainment.com.
What was that?
HatterEntertainment.com.
Ah, HatterEntertainment.com. So go there, because spelling Schiegel isn't easy.
SCHIEGE.
You see?
I can do it when I'm not talking. I can do it in my head when I can type it.
I usually
SCHIGIEL.
I always want to put 2 L's in it.
Well, he gets upset. He gets upset every time somebody spells Greg wrong, which is every time somebody spells his name, because he's got
spelled Greg with 3 G's, 2 at the end.
Two G's on the end.
That's his own fault.
Nobody gets the extra G on the end, and every time he's upset. Like, when are you gonna like stop being surprised by this?
Did Chris do some work for Ahoy? Yes, he did.
Yes.
#danger. We were talking about that earlier.
Actually, I just animated the intro to #danger, to the animated #danger series. If you go to the Ahoy's YouTube channel, you can see it there.
Go to Ahoy's YouTube channel and see Chris's animation. I'm surprised and happy Ahoy is still around. Yeah. I haven't bought many.
Yeah, actually, most of the books I buy are from Ahoy now.
Speaking of Ahoy,
basically, I have a standing order at the shop. Just put everything Ahoy does, put that in my box.
Okay.
So I really do read everything, but I don't pick them up for a while. So I'll go for a few weeks without reading anything.
How often do you go to the comic shop?
It might be a month or two.
Oh wow! How close is it to you?
There's like 4 comic shops in Greensboro.
Okay.
And there's one really close by in walking distance, and then there's another one that I get my Ahoy books from. It's not within walking distance, so I have to just kind of wait until somebody wants to take a ride somewhere. But I don't have a car. That's your mainstream comic book success.
Ahoy is always comedy, which seems a risky approach in the comic shop market. Yeah,
for sure, it is.
It is. Another comic I got this week. Aerosmith Behind Enemy Lines, with the logo overgrown with weeds.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder if that's a specific plant. I don't know. Ivy.
What's that thing that druids used to collect?
Mistletoe?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. But they continue the story behind enemy lines. This takes place during World War I in a world with magic, and Arrowsmith had to let himself be captured so he can do some behind the enemy lines mission. And this one was kind of a tough issue in that they had to sacrifice some of the other magic users in order to go on with the mission. And we get some nudity in this one too. We get Arrowsmith meeting a young French lady. And I think that his partner here, his boy, set him up to get some during wartime. I think that's what his guy he just met, the other spies on the last page, standing outside lighting a cigarette meant.
Mm-hmm. But you know that in France that would hardly qualify as nudity.
Yeah. That's why they're remastering the original series and for the upcoming collected edition, because Wildstorm made them cover up some of the nudity in that one. That was so they're putting the nudity back in. Mm-hmm. But it's solid. Busiek and Pacheco, a B comic, not an A, but a satisfying B. So that's all right.
Yeah. I'm not sure how well that thing was. I know that the first volume was sold in Europe. I can't remember if it was by Panini or by Semic. The in France it was Panini and Semic who published Marvel. There was a time when Panini published DC, but Semic still had the rights to Wildstorm, even after DC had bought them, because they came along with Image. They still had Top Cow. I remember seeing Top Cow in France at the Paris Orly airport. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I don't know exactly who published it. So, but it's not coming out. I'm not sure if there ever was a collected edition. In Portugal, it was published as a collected edition. We even invited Pacheco over to an attempt at doing an American style convention here. I don't know how they managed to do it, but they got Palmieri and Amanda Connor also came.
Oh, cool!
And because a book publisher was involved, Neil Gaiman came.
Wow, some good guests.
Yeah, but then there was just no money for a second one.
See, Sleepy Reader says, I was looking at the Pacheco art in the first volume and the current of Arrowsmith. I think the current art is a little more generic, less nuanced. Interesting.
I think Pacheco doesn't need to try so hard now. It's like when John Byrne uses fewer lines to do the same effect, but everybody says his drawing is worse because it has less details.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Pacheco is going through the same metamorphosis, let's call it, doing more with less.
John Byrne figured out the exact amount of work it took him to do a comics page, and that's what he did.
Mm-hmm.
After a while.
And so did Pacheco. Pacheco did a lot of. He tried to be Joe Madureira when he was drawing X-Men.
Yeah.
But when they did Avengers Forever, he still had a lot of. It was still detailed, and it took him a while to get all the detail right. But in the first Arrowsmith miniseries, he was beginning to tone down how many lines he needed to. After that, I kind of didn't pay so much attention. I didn't when he did Superman. I didn't pay that much attention, and then it kind of disappeared from my radar.
I felt there was less acting in the characters' poses, Sleepy Reader says. I wonder if he uses photo reference. I don't know.
I think he already did.
Because sometimes when you use photo reference, the quality of the photos can really affect what you get out of them. But I don't think he uses photo reference, but I don't know.
Salvador La Roca used to.
Yeah, it's tough to tell. And some guys use photo reference. But like my criticism of Alex Maleev back 15, 20 years ago was he was a good artist, but a bad photographer.
You know, it's quite possible that it was Brubaker who gave him the photos.
Could be. Either way, he's much better now. He is much better now.
I know there was one case where it was Brubaker who provided him with photos.
Because that could have been it.
We invited Brubaker over for one of our festivals about 15 years ago when he was doing Daredevil. I can't remember why we invited him. I think my comic shop was involved in that because the organizers would never occur to them to invite an American superhero writer. But since he had time, I know he took photos of the old part of Sintra in the Lisbon metropolitan area, because there's a scene in Daredevil where Matt's hiding out in Europe, and it shows the Sintra castle.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I think I've seen Maliv's stuff since then, and probably beginning I don't know 10 years ago or something. I've really liked Maliv's art a lot more because his reference is better, I think. Like if you look at his Daredevil stuff that he did with Brubaker, everything was a medium shot.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like everything was a medium shot from straight on. Because I guess that's what old Frodo reference was. There was no changing, not a lot of changing of the angles and stuff. And I could tell I was like, you know what, he's a good artist, but man, take some better reference photos.
Which is funny, considering that everybody wants to do Frank Miller in Daredevil.
Yeah.
Maliv didn't.
Yeah.
Not Lee Weeks did. John Romita Jr. did, although not the same way. But Maliv stayed there a few years, but it was that Maliv's cinematic style where people talk. Of course, having written for Bendis first, having drawn for Bendis, the Talking Heads.
Yeah, Sleepy Reader says, still good art, Pacheco's Arrowsmith. But since I just read the first series, I couldn't help but compare. Yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah. What I'm always going to complain about is that map, you know.
Oh.
It's not, Tiroli does not make any sense for Austria-Hungary.
Did they give us any more of that this issue? I'm trying to remember.
The prisoner camp is... They were in the prisoner camp.
They gave us any more maps or names.
Well, the maps show up at the beginning or at the end.
Yeah. Sometimes with these series, they give you more maps each issue, but they didn't with that one.
No, I think it'll be too complicated to try to let's say that they try to build a map of the German regions where they were being held, or where they have to find the rock trolls.
Right.
It would given the way that Busiek has been building that world, it would require Busiek trying to find out the Latin names of German cities in the Middle Ages to try to use them there.
Right.
Because they had even though the Germanic tribes didn't speak vulgar Latin, because of Christianization, they ended up having Latin forms of the city names, which were used in foreign correspondence, because Latin was the lingua franca of the educated classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sleepy Reader says he thinks they stopped with the map and back matter. Yeah, I think they have, but they're saving it for the trade probably.
Mm-hmm.
They have more back matter in the trade. And since they didn't get indie comics in last week. I got a double batch of comics this week, and this is last week's Saga, which left us with a cliffhanger and then kind of explained the cliffhanger away with backstory. A little strange approach. Because the cliffhanger was that they the main character in here, the woman, is from the planet where everybody has wings. And we left with, she was, a pirate ship grabbed them, and the pirate wanted her to do mission as but her wings were hidden as long as she didn't have wings, because she hated, because there's a war going on between the winged people and the horned people. And he didn't want anything to do with the winged people. So then they flipped to a backstory from the year before, where she was on some backwater planet and her wings were damaged, I think, sometime during the story. So here she found a doctor to remove her wings, which we didn't know. So that was like the backstory that fixed the cliffhanger. I was like, oh, okay, that's a little weird. And then they got on with the story. Because they needed, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They needed 5 pages of story to fix that cliffhanger, which is a little weird.
An amazing mental image just popped into my head, and it's Stan Lee in the 1970s yelling at Brian K. Vaughan that he's supposed to start with the cliffhanger so that it sets up for action in the first pages, so that the kids get hooked.
Nope, didn't do that here. Started with a nice pastoral scene and some puppies playing. It was a little weird. I just found that it was fine, but it was just such a strange way to resolve a cliffhanger. That I was like, okay, it makes sense, but that was a strange way to resolve a cliffhanger. But it's Saga. It's supposed to be long and rambling. So it's okay that it is.
Yeah, I found that thing rambling by page 5 of issue number 1, which is why I never picked it up again.
So I like its rambling nature. That's why I've enjoyed it. I knew going in, I was like, oh, a long rambling story. I can deal with this. I'm tired of comic books being so tightly structured. Give me a long rambling story. And boy, have I gotten one. 57 issues worth.
The thing is, Brian K. Vaughan has a history of doing an intricate randomized ballet and then messing up the ending.
Well, I expect no ending on this.
Because he doesn't know how to end comics, which is what we got for Ex Machina.
That's what I mean, but that's normal. It is, for any long-running comic, giving an ending for it is really tough. One of the best endings was Birthright. Because what they did was, I think it was 48 issues. And it was, Earth in this alternate magic world. The ultimate magic world wanted to kind of invade Earth and take over, or whatever the big bad guy did. And the Birthright, the main character, was trying to stop him. He eventually didn't stop him. We got this big bad war. And which was pretty good, the big bad war. Eventually Earth won. But then we got about 6 issues of epilogue that really worked. It was kind of like the big bad war was over, and now what's everybody going to do? And it really, you rarely get that after a big bad war. So it actually worked for me, that sort of epilogue of these people having to adjust to life, the new reality on Earth, and the big bad war being over, and what do we do now, kind of thing. So I think that's what made me really like the ending of Birthright. Was not only was the big bad war fun, it ended like you expected it to end. The good guys won, but it gave you, like I said, 6. When do you ever get 5, 4? I don't remember if it was 4, 5, or 6 issues of epilogue after a story. It's crazy, but it worked. I know Sleepy Reader liked that too, the end of Birthright. So, Have you ever read Birthright, Chris?
Nope.
Gee, Nopey, you're the naysaying turtle.
I read Why the Last Man.
I never liked that one. I only read a little bit at the beginning. I tried to start it a few times. I've just, the art just didn't draw me in.
I read the whole series. I liked it.
Most people do. Sleepy.
You're saying I'm just like some commoner.
What was that?
Who, me?
What did you say? What was
I
your
said,
comment?
Oh, yeah, most people do. I liked it. Oh, yeah, most people do. You're just telling me I'm some commoner with just like common taste.
You're the rabble. The rabble like that sort of thing.
I'm not sophisticated like you. I don't know how many times we need to prove that. I don't even know what a sport is.
Better than 90% of endings, I thought, of Birthright. Yeah, it definitely. Like I said, I really enjoyed the epilogue stuff. I thought that was a good idea and well executed. Well executed. Well, let's see. Another book I got. Speaking, 38 is a lot of issues of a comic these days. Monstrous, issue 38.
Yeah, I think that title has a loyal following, and it probably sells well in collected edition.
Yeah, probably. Because I know who's the artist? Sana Takeda. I think she's Japanese, right?
I'm not sure if it's Japanese or she's Japanese American.
I think she's actually Japanese because I think she has a following over there. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I saw some like pictures of her with her translator or something like that. So I could be wrong.
Was the translator CB Cebulski?
No, what's his Japanese name?
Akira Yoshida.
There we go.
So Akira Yoshida was supposed to be a clue that it was a pen name because it's like being called John Smith.
Yeah. Didn't turn out too cool. And this whole issue of Monstrous has got some nice art. This whole issue is about the meeting of the Dawn Court, I think. This all sorts of high fantasy stuff going on in this issue. And it's all a meeting.
Yeah. I can't quite find myself interested in that, but it's the kind of thing that if I were an editor, I would look at it and say, I wouldn't buy this, but I know that a lot of people would.
Yeah, it's good. It's not my favorite, but it's good. It's not really up my alley, but it's well done, so I enjoy it. I'm not usually a high fantasy guy. Once again, this is another long rambling story, which is fine with me. There's so few long rambling stories these days that the novelty of it is good for me too. But yeah, we're on issue 38 of Monstrous. That's like 1 million issues now these days.
But I think it doesn't come out every month, does it?
No, it comes out monthly when it comes out. Like it can come out monthly for 6 months and then be gone for 4 months or something.
Yeah, it's what we in Portugal call a Catholic publication. Comes out this month, God willing.
But as an I've been a nearly exclusive indie comic reader since the mid 80s, so I'm used to that. I wouldn't have half my collection if I didn't have a pull list. Because a lot of my collection is comics that came out whenever they could come out. And if I had to go and actually look for them, I probably would have stopped going to the comic store and missed out on all of it, like everybody else. But it's amazing how few comics there are at issue 38. And speaking of Usagi Yojimbo, Chris, have you been getting the reprint series of Usagi too?
No.
In color for the first time?
I have not.
I've been even though I have the original black and whites, I've been getting the color ones. Just because I haven't read the original black and whites in 30 years, so they're new to me again. This is Lone Goat and Kid, issue 3. Still no Lone Goat or Kid, but this is the first time we're introduced to the Bat Ninjas. Which clan are they? Not the Keiko clan was the other ninjas. Blood Wings. There's some, like I said, there's this clan of ninjas that's all bats, and I liked the way Scott Peterson drew them on the cover. I think he did a nice job with those bats, with the hatching on them. He's the mouse guard guy. So bats are right up his alley. Yeah. Sleepy Reader saw it. There was a standout cover. I thought so too. A standout cover with Usagi fighting these bats. And he draws Usagi more like a real rabbit, so it reminds me of Watership Down. Watership Down. Do you have any of the Usagi collected editions, Chris?
I have, yeah, some of the they're not quite comic book size.
They're the 6x9
graphic novel size. Yeah, the 6x9 format. Yeah, I got a bunch of those.
Okay,
not all of them.
Right.
There's a million of them.
There's like 250 issues of Usagi.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of them. Yeah, Watership Down. I haven't thought of that book in decades. Comes into my head when I see rabbits for some. Have you ever seen the Watership Down animated cartoon? Either of you two?
I remember it being on, but I was too young to understand like what it was, or what was going on with it. I just knew it was a cartoon and it was on at night, so it's supposed to, it makes it feel like, oh, it's like one of those, it's an animated special, but I knew the tone of it was like, no, this isn't fun.
oh yeah, it's not, because it's really it's adult. It's a Watership Down. I think there was one movie of it, and it's about the struggle for life between these rabbits, and like and it's rabbits fighting each other, and it's bloody. So it's really, really kind of an amazing. I haven't seen it since the 90s, probably, but
I mean, like, is it specifically like an analogy for some historical immigration movement or something?
I do not remember. But it's one of those things that you think is going to be a cute bunny cartoon, and it's this vicious, bloody bunny cartoon. So it's a little weird, based on a book, which must not have been a children's book. And another one from last week, the first issue of Ghost Cage. I think this is a 3-issue thing. And it's by Nick Dragotta and Caleb Goellner. Goellner. And I'm a big fan of Nick Dragotta's East of West.
Do you remember Nick as an intern at Marvel?
No, I don't. Who was he an intern for?
I want to say Tim Toohey, though. I could be wrong.
Okay. I do not remember.
But, same summer as me. You don't remember me as an intern either.
No. Okay. Yeah, it's funny. Most of the interns remember me because I always made a point to be nice to the interns because so many people weren't. So they remember me because I was nice to them, but I don't necessarily remember them because they were there for so brief a time.
Yeah.
But I was disappointed with this issue 1 of 3 because it's really done in a manga, a Japanese style, right down to being black and white, with lots of zipatone or computer zipatone as it is now, and the style just wasn't great for me, and the story was lots of Japanese style layouts too. And I don't even remember what the story was. It had a guy who looks almost like one of his East of West guys with a different haircut. This guy in the front. Where is he? There he is. He's got more of a pompadour on top and long hair in the back. But, it was about that guy controlling the world, and he made these robots. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Is Chris in that MTV clip? He's in the fake MTV clip, right? Oh, no, he's not in the one from 1992. But if you look up Chris, he did a parody of the Rob Liefeld Levi's jeans commercial. Now, that MTV clip was from 95, and Chris wasn't at Marvel till 97. I know that because I just asked him about that when he was at Marvel first. So.
Well, I interned in 97, yeah, but
right. Well, we'll count that.
Hired in 98.
He started as an employee in 98. Which is like us saying back in 53, when we were young. A long time ago.
Yeah.
So I have no idea if I put just the first issue of this on my pull list or I put all 3 issues on. I wouldn't be so disappointed if I put just the first issue and didn't get the other 2. But if I put them on my pull list, I'll get them and read them. We'll see. Because usually what I do is that when final order cutoff comes and there's something I want to try a first issue of, I on the email, I just click it and I can either add just that issue or the whole series. Most of the time I tried just the first issue, see if I like it, and then add the whole series. But since it was Nick Dragotta and I liked his last series, I may have added all 3 issues at once. Not sure. We'll see. Marvel in the late 90s must have been a rough place. Was that right after their bankruptcy? It was. Well, it was rougher having lived through the bankruptcy. Chris came after it, so I don't know how it was for him.
It came in the middle of it.
In the middle of it was?
There is like...
But you weren't there for the mass firings.
No. I mean, I was there for a mass firing. It was like on a Halloween. Okay. But I missed all the big ones.
Right.
But yeah, when I got there, it was like every month there was a new person in charge. Right. It seemed like.
Yeah, that era. A new publisher, a new president, a new something.
Yeah.
And it was a little empty. It was emptier then. Like that whole back half of the bullpen wasn't being used.
Yeah.
You were there.
But that's all I knew.
Right. That's all you knew. So it didn't matter. Yeah.
So yeah, I got to hear all the stories about, oh, you don't even know. It used to be awesome here.
The Pope of Pot would deliver at lunchtime. Let's see. One more comic I got this week. I mentioned the Radiant Black universe. Here's Radiant Black, number 13. I like this crazy digital cover. It's got this weird look to it. I don't know who did this cover. Let's see. STE. They credited. Cover A, Stefano Simeone. Whoever that might be. Marcelo Costa, the artist, didn't even get to do a cover. I wonder if he doesn't like doing covers. I mean, I imagine he would. Oh, yeah, it's credited on the back, too. I didn't realize. They now sometimes cover the credit artist either in the UPC or near the UPC. But another good issue of Radiant Black. Cleaning up some stuff in his personal life and then getting into fight with this guy who I'm not sure if he killed on purpose or not. This is the superhero book that they said is the most popular superhero book at Image since Invincible. Pretty nice logo, too. Just looks like a Helvetica. Messed around with a bit. Much better than the logos I had last week. And all those first issues I tried with bad logos. Who's doing the logo for your book, Chris?
The Clawson book?
Yeah, any idea? Does that just get done at Random House and or...
No. Well, I was wondering, but Smitty ended up drawing something, and Smitty penciled something, and then I inked it, and I just assumed that they were going to take it, but they didn't do anything to it, so it was me and Smitty together made the logo. Okay. They don't have designers that make the logos. They just, I guess, or maybe they do, but
I was just curious because last week when my comics weren't in, I decided to spend some extra money and buy 4 first issues. Just of indie stuff that was, I think they were both Scout and Black Caravan books. There was 2 Scout and 2 Black Caravan books. And there were some terrible logos on them. Terrible logos. So that just made me wonder, who does these terrible logos? I wonder if it's the people on the book or someone else. Because everybody thinks they can do a logo these days because of computers.
Everyone that can weigh in will.
Yeah.
Because that looks fun. Oh, what if you did this? I think you should do this,
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of surprised at how much they didn't do that. And they just took what we gave them. And then I specifically said, like I did a mock-up of the cover,
and
they wanted every part of it in layers, so they could play color forms with it. So I was expecting like a lot of big, they're going to move this, they're going to enlarge this, they're going to make everything as big as possible. That's always the answer. Make everything big, everything big. They didn't actually change anything from what I gave them, except they made the logo a little bit bigger. But I specifically told them, like, knowing that it's a hardcover book, my preference is to center it between the hinge and the right edge of the book. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's annoying to have a graphic go over that hinge. That's like a tangent.
Right.
So I explained to them that's why I mocked it up this way. And then they sent back, like, they just completely ignored it. They extended the logo, so like it's going to start right on the hinge. But they just don't care.
Everyone
and nobody will care except for me when it comes out. It's going to drive me nuts. No one else will even notice.
Yep. Everyone can self-medicate and take care of legal issues as well as logos. Chris was one of the original. Chris was a fan of Hawkeye before it was cool.
Oh, another Hawkeye theme song animation. Check that out too.
Hawkeye theme song, a new one?
Oh, you've seen it. It's the it's basically the 1963 Captain America cartoon intro.
Okay, then I must have seen it. Yeah,
but it's Hawkeye space pasted over it, and every time he says Captain America, like this voiceover comes and dubs it over and it says Hawkeye instead. Not even attempting to match the melody of it.
Because when Chris started Marvel Minis, Hawkeye was his main character in the strip.
Yeah, I remember.
And then Hawkeye became, sometime after that, it became cool to like Hawkeye. Because when Chris started that, it wasn't cool to like Hawkeye.
Well, I think Matt Fraction made him cool, right?
No, even before then, I think it started. By the time Matt Fraction came around, Hawkeye was really cool.
I think music was really interested in making Hawkeye shine, and then when he moved into the Thunderbolts.
That's right, yeah.
Although we had the West Coast Avengers mailing list, which was the successor to the Avengers mailing list back when there were no internet forums. And there was a woman there. She was a Hawkeye fan #1. She was called Lonnie Holland.
Hawkeye fan #1. Yeah, I remember specifically seeing Hawkeye become sort of hip over I can't remember what years they were now, probably the early 2000s. Over time, become hipper and hipper. Then after he showed up in the movie, of course, a lot more Hawkeye fans. And after this TV show, even more Hawkeye fans.
My take was that he was still kind of like he was just an easy punchline.
Yeah.
For most people from the movies. So I feel like he didn't really get his due until this series came out.
Which to the TV series?
Yeah.
I think because there were Jeremy Renner fans, there were more Hawkeye fans. Like you're right, he may not have gotten his due as a character because it never gave him much to do. But since there were still fans of Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye, even though he didn't have much to do.
Yeah.
He was still out there as like a popular character. But like in the, 80s and through most of the 90s, if everyone gave Hawkeye a thought, it was as a punchline in the comics, that is. He wasn't that popular a character, despite a couple of lame miniseries.
Well, I liked them because of West Coast Avengers. When I was a kid, that book got launched. And I was on board from the beginning, and I thought, yeah, he's awesome. He's so cool.
The 83 miniseries is pretty good, actually. I remember liking it a lot when I read it, because that's when he meets Mockingbird, and and Mark Runnell even did the breakdowns.
Yeah, I remember I read it back. I bought it back in 83, but I barely remember it. So I don't think I've looked at it since then. So it's another one of the I have no opinion on anymore because I haven't read it since then. I can remember my opinion of 1983. I thought it was okay. But any opinion over 10 years old is expired. I'm stuck on the fraction version of Hawkeye, says Sleepy Reader. Yeah, that's I love those covers, that's for sure. I haven't read a ton. The only reason I wasn't a big fan of the fraction version of Hawkeye is because to me that's like attempting to make a Marvel comic into an indie comic. Not that it was bad at all. It just wasn't my flavor because I've read indie comics about everyday life kind of thing that people do full time. Not a Marvel guy doing sort of a slice of life comic is like an indie guy doing a superhero comic.
Yeah, but you kind of almost like it. But it worked because.
I think it worked for a lot of people. I'm just hardcore indie. That's why it didn't work for me.
Yeah, but it's challenging to not do it that way. Like to have him go up against anything that's like a super powered threat.
Yeah, that's just not what I'm interested in. That's all I'm saying. Is that the reason I don't want to put down that version of Hawkeye. But first of all, I love the David Aja art and storytelling. But I just didn't have much interest in the story. I liked the TV version of it. It was all right. It was pretty good. And the last thing I got this week was The Lion and the Eagle #2. The graphic novel size one from Aftershock. Another one I'm happy to see is still around. Aftershock Comics. That's the one Mike Martz is editor-in-chief or something of. What is his title? Let's see here. Editor-in-chief. That's what it is.
I was just going to ask, but I guess that's the answer.
Yep.
Do you do any work for them?
No, I've never done any work for them. Corey Breen has. Where do I know that name from? Did he work at Image? Or do I know that just from reading credits? I just recognize his name. He's the production guy.
We had 2 Coreys at Marvel, but that's not either one of them.
Nope, that's not either one of them. But this is the first of this format that's not a one shot. That's continuing. It's Garth Ennis and P.J. Holden telling the story of 1943. Is this 44? I forget what year it is, but it's the World War II, the British Army fighting in Burma, fighting the Japanese in Burma. And it's pretty bloody. And it's pretty, realistic war comic thing. Really enjoyed this issue. And it's 40 pages for $8 in this oversized format. Liked the first issue, liked the second issue even better. But you get backstory with all the characters, and we get introduced to who are they called? The Indian, not the Gurkhas in this. We get introduced to the Gurkhas who were from India, who were fought for the British Army, and they were legendary fighters. But good stuff from top to. If you want a good war comic, The Lion and the Eagle is it. I'm wondering what format they're going to collect these in. Because I have to imagine they're going to do a collected edition. Are they going to do it at this size? Are they going to shrink it down? I don't know.
They ought to do it on that size and hardcover only.
You would think so. I just don't know. Like, do you remember Fantagraphics had this line called the Ignatz Collection? They were oversized. They published. I think they came out it must be 15 years ago. And I don't know how long this. There's maybe 20 issues of it. They were all different things. And what was the name of? There was a Richard Sallow one I got called. What is its name? I got it here in my want list. Delphine. So there was a Richard Sallow book called Delphine that came out in this Ignatz format, which was about maybe a little bigger than magazine size even. Nice paper, really nicely printed. And I managed to track down the like when it came out, I got the first two. And I never got the last two. Years later, I tried to track them down. I could only get issue 3. But they have it in a collected edition, but they printed it that big in the collected edition, smaller than comic book size. So if you get the Ignatz individual issues, they're big. But the collected edition is small, so I never wanted to get the collected edition. Too indie for indie. That's me. Do you like the art in Lion and the Eagle? I do. I know what Sleepy Reader was saying, that he didn't, for I think the first issue, and I can kind of see what he means. He thought the art didn't have to be this big. And I think that's because he's drawing a lot with pen. So he's got small lines sometimes that the art might look better if it was shrunk down to close some things up. It doesn't seem he's taking advantage of the big size with some of his lines. I mean, I like it big. I'm fine with it. But I understand Sleepy's criticism of it, especially with knowing that for some of these, they took small, not this, I don't think they did it for the Lion and the Eagle, but for that other one that Paulo said was published, I think in Italy first at a small size. And then I had the version of it, and they blew up the pages this big, and it looked like they were blown up small pages. I can't remember what the name of it was. But also, I think like pages where he spots black look fine blown up, look fine at this size. But pages where he doesn't spot blacks can sometimes look a little thin. But this issue worked for me big because there was more wide open shots, planes flying and stuff like that. But I have been liking the art. So I mean, it's it's solid B-level art. I'm not going to tell you it's A-level art. But once again, I'm okay with B's. I just don't want C's. Have you seen any of these oversized graphic novels from Aftershock, Chris?
No.
They just started producing. They're mostly, this is the first one that isn't a one shot, and they're just like done in one stories for $7 or $8, 40 pages in this graphic novel format. And I've been enjoying them. I just started picking them up because I always say I'd like some more stuff in the European graphic album format, and they're actually doing some, so I may as well buy them. And they're not overpriced. That's key too. Dripping water. I just saw I can't remember his name. He's an old YouTuber who he goes by Evil Streak now. And he stopped making videos for years. He just started making a couple of comic videos again.
Evil Streak is back.
Yeah, I think he used to go by Boba Fett in a number. But he picked up some comics for the first time in a while, and he was very unhappy with the price of the Punisher book. He was like $7 for a first issue, and it's a 6-issue mini. He did the math and went, "No thanks. I'll wait for the trade. It'll be cheaper." I was like, "Yep, welcome back to comics, where Marvel and DC publish all sorts of $8 and $10 first issues." They finally figured that if everybody's only going to be buying first issues, they're going to make them expensive.
We'll show you.
I don't know if that's the greatest plan in the world, but it's
you want to. Oh, you're going to buy this? We'll show you.
We'll make you pay extra for it. Though sometimes that's not a bad, because one of the criticisms I had with the 4 first issues I bought last week was there wasn't enough in them. None of them were bad. There just wasn't enough in any of them to give me a sense of what they were and hook me. Which is a bad thing. Which is why I think sometimes, like what they do with some of the Image indie comics especially, is give you more value in the first issues. They'll sell either a double size issue for $4 or a double or triple size issue for $6 on that first issue. And I think that really helps me get a sense of and that hooks me more. That just happened with What's the Furthest Place from Here. That first issue was big, and it gave them lots of room to do stuff, and they hooked me. Have you seen that one, Chris? What's the Furthest Place from Here?
No. Sounds like I'm going to have to start buying a bunch of new stuff.
I think you're going to have to. You're going to have to start paying attention to my videos and see what I buy every week. I post
as soon as I catch up on work. As soon as I catch up on work, I'm going to the comic store.
Which is never?
Which might be never.
How many pages do you have left to ink?
70.
Oh, you're practically done.
Yeah.
70.
Yeah.
How big is the graphic novel?
240 pages.
Wow. Are you getting paid a page rate to keep you? How do you get paid by a graphic novel from a book publisher?
No, it's just for the whole book.
Do they give you an advance?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like being paid like an author. They give you an advance so you can live and do the book.
Yeah.
But live just enough to do the book.
Pretty much. But with with the amount of time I have, it's like, well, what else did you expect to do with your life? You wanted to draw books. Guess what? That's all you get to do from now on.
And after you do the book, they don't care if you live or die.
Well, it's supposed to be 2 books.
Yeah.
So yeah, this all starts over again.
But they don't give you the advance on the second one until you get the first one done, right?
Yeah.
War in Ukraine will make yellow saffron unicorn sunset pigment so expensive that comics will double in price. Well, there's a pigment I haven't heard of, but it sounds good. Yeah, I still can't believe Image is 30 this year.
And they're still acting like teenagers.
What a different company they are than when they started.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone listened to any of those Rob?
They're not going to last more than a year.
Has anyone listened to any of those Rob Liefeld podcasts?
Not for a while, but I at least went up at least to number 80, I think. Then I stopped.
Wow, you listened to 80 of them?
Not all of them, but about 50, between 50 and 60 of the first 80.
Okay. I was just curious. I listened to one of them. And I kind of want to listen to more, but he can be a little insufferable.
Yeah. He's the greatest genius ever. He was always nice and kind to everyone, and he never ripped off anybody.
So you have listened to it.
Podcast. Pick out of his impressions.
Well, his impressions are pretty good. It is a pretty funny Todd.
Yeah, his lack of self-awareness is amazing.
Yep.
Like the one podcast I listened to was about the Heroes Reborn thing.
Yeah.
And he'd say things like, what was it? He called Todd McFarlane, his kind of role became to be a scold. He's like, guys, you got to get your books out on time. Guys, you got to get this and that. And I'm like, to be a scold? That's not being a scold. That's expecting your business partner to live up to their obligations.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was like, and then, once he and Jim Lee signed the deal with Marvel to do Heroes Reborn, he was like, oh, these guys got really mad at us. I'm like, well, you betrayed your business partner, don't you? No, he doesn't know that. He still sees himself as, as a freelancer able to do whatever he wants. He didn't know he had business partners who he had obligations to. That never entered his mind. I was like, wow, the lack of self-awareness is amazing. But that's the way people are. I like him on Twitter. No, I follow Rob on Twitter. He's got a much better handle on what's popular than I do.
Yeah.
So it's like, I have no idea what makes something popular. I have no idea how to be popular. I have very little, it's kind of like the popular escapes me. But he's actually got a good handle on it. Huh. Do you know any other creators doing podcasts that are worth checking out? No, I haven't listened to any podcasts in ages besides stuff on YouTube. I was going
to say, what about Kayfabe?
Yeah,
that's a good podcast, but there's too much of it for me, and I'm not really the target audience.
Yeah, well, you got to cherry pick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I occasionally will cherry pick and watch something, but with me, they're mostly preaching to the converted. So, what kayfabe is good for is exposing a lot of comics people haven't heard of to sort of people, and I've heard of them all.
Yeah, well, I had heard of Faust, but it would never have occurred me to even listen to an interview with the guy.
Yeah.
It was informative. I didn't really like what I remembered from it. It wasn't really that interesting. But after listening to the interview, at least the guy's fascinating.
Yeah. So, sometimes I haven't listened to them, but sometimes it's like I always say, my favorite issue of Back Issue, I think it was was the one that was all about Dell and Gold Key. I remember when I bought it, I was like, Dell and Gold Key. I don't know much about Dell and Gold Key. Do I really want to read this? But since I didn't know much about Dell and Gold Key, it was all interesting to me. It was like this whole world of comics from the 50s and 60s that I knew nothing about. So sometimes it's not the ones that you think you'll be interested in that are the most interesting. Kayfabe also helps spread comics history. The many that don't, yeah, exactly. They spread comic history to people who might not be interested in it too. I think they've done a really good job with that channel, even if it's too much for me to keep up with. I think they've done an excellent job, and they've done an excellent job in using that channel to sell their comics. So that's pretty good. That's some pretty good stuff.
Yeah, that's near impossible.
I know.
I think it's kind of intrusive when they're doing interviews and they interrupt the interviews to plug their comics.
Yeah, but you got to do that, kind of.
Yeah,
that's part of the job of them selling.
That's
comics,
the world. You got to ads get thrown into everything.
Yeah. May as well make them ads for yourself if you got that many. You've got a lot of viewers.
You can always fast forward it too.
That's good. Yeah, I notice the ads don't show up when I'm watching on my computer on a web browser, but they'll show up in the app if I'm watching on phone or iPad. I'm like, wonder what that is.
For them specifically or in general?
No, in general. In general. They'll like pop up ad because I'm watching something on my iPad and a blaring ad comes right in the middle of it. That never happens when I'm watching on the computer.
What browser are you using?
Chrome.
Okay.
That's what I usually watch on. So yeah, I don't know. But at least they do content that isn't all an ad for themselves. That's true. They do. And they also get to cherry pick the past and show, they can go over Miller's Daredevil or stuff like that, which gets more views than some of the other obscure stuff they do. They're outlaw comics from the 80s stuff. I don't think that gets as many views. But even naming them outlaw comics was a good idea. Because people are much more interested in outlaw comics than indie comics or alternative comics. I think that was a good bit of branding they did for their channel.
They call indie comics outlaw comics?
Yeah. A lot of the low budget black and white ones from the 80s and 90s, that's what they call. I think Bill Sienkiewicz would have an interesting podcast. Yeah, he could. He certainly had a long and varied career in comics. He could probably tell a story or two.
And they have the good taste of being fans of Jeff Darrow.
Yeah. I think I generally like their taste in comics. I mean, a lot of like the early they were weaned on that early 90s stuff. I don't like, but I can see them liking it because that was their first comics.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because they appear to be about my age or slightly older, but their references are younger than mine.
Yeah.
Because I started reading superhero comics at age 6. And the translated editions were years behind what was going on in the United States.
Right.
So I was reading late 70s, early 80s material. So I sometimes say that I started reading comics before I was born because I was reading comics that were published originally in the US before I was born.
Tit Goblin says, Jared, you and Kayfabe got me back into comics. Good. I'm glad I can help get you back into comics. You're old for your age, Paulo. Yeah, that's because you're interested in history, too.
Yeah.
That's what it is. When you're interested in history, people always think you're old because you know stuff that.
Right. Yeah. Most people aren't interested in finding out what happened before they got into stuff.
Right.
And I always was.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there were things in the comics that made me be that way, just because I liked reading. I like reading. So in general, so in the comics, I always read the letter sections, and I remember one of the first bits of comic history that I learned was somebody had asked why DC had a Captain Marvel. Marvel let them. So they explained about the Fawcett lawsuit, and this was way before the internet. So we're talking about mid-80s. Those guys are in Brazil. They don't have access to American fan press in the same way. There were a couple of guys who managed to get their hands on some of the fan press, but learning about the history of American comics was outside North America was not the same. Was not easy. But they knew about the Fawcett lawsuit. They knew about DC eventually buying Captain Marvel. They knew about the trademark situation that allowed Marvel to create their Captain Marvel, and it kind of opened up the way for me to want to learn how some things were done.
Cool. Mary Shazam. I think that I just saw that recently. I'm like, that doesn't roll off the tongue, because DC officially dropped Captain Marvel name and now call him Shazam. So all the Captain Marvel family has to use Shazam.
Yeah. Well, maybe she can become Sheila Shazam.
Yeah, that'll work better than Mary Shazam. That was a little weird.
Captain Shazam Jr.
Uncle Shazam. That's all right. That's all right. So it's just about 8:45, so I guess we'll wrap up now. We usually wrap up at 8:45, Chris. Just to let you know, in case you ever want to come back on and chat with us again as you're sitting there and inking on a Friday night.
I mean, I'm sitting here anyway, so might as well.
Because when Tim and Jared started doing this, the show was supposed to be about an hour. Then it kind of went up to almost 2 hours. Then Tim invited me and Scott to join the conversation. So with 4 people here, we ended up going 3 hours, and we didn't even notice.
Yeah. We get like Scott when Tim and I started, like the two of us alone can talk. So I had Scott and Paulo in, and we got lots to talk about.
Well, let's be honest. I think Jared could do it all by himself.
Nah, talking to myself is not nearly as much fun. I prefer having someone to bounce off.
Yeah, that's why I stopped doing stuff on my channel.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk for 10 minutes, just showing you my comics, no problem. But 3 hours is tough to fill. You need to catch Chris between jobs. No, we need to catch Chris during jobs. That's when he's sitting there. That's what he's doing right now. He's been working this whole show. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm gonna be stuck here anyway. It's like this makes it more fun.
Yeah.
We'll
invite you.
Otherwise, I'd be just listening to a podcast I can't talk back to.
That's what Chris says sometimes about our Wednesday night Zoom drawing club. He's like, this is my favorite podcast, because there's a bunch of people there talking, as there is sometimes.
I thought it was Tuesday nights.
Tuesday night, pardon me. It was Wednesday night originally. Then I changed. Sometimes I.
Oh, you having a Wednesday night party you didn't tell me about?
No, nope.
Oh, okay, thanks. Busted.
Tuesday night drawing club. Though I think we lost Kevin Kobasic from the Tuesday night, because he's commuting into the city now on Tuesdays, and that's a long commute from New Paltz. All right, so everybody have a good night out there. We'll catch you next Friday.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Nice talking.
Nice.
See you later.
I'll hit end broadcast.